Agents arresting 4 farm workers in Western Mass associated with the Red Fire Farm last month. The detainment's part of a larger raid throughout the state, resulting in the arrest of nearly 400 immigrants in the U.S. illegally. Thanks for joining us for Western Mass News at 10 on this Tuesday. I'm Chris Pisano. Western Mass News reporter Addie Patterson joins us live in studio with more after speaking with an immigration attorney about the case. Addie.
Chris, the attorney I spoke with tells us the men who were arrested had no prior criminal convictions and doesn't believe ICE had legal grounds to make those arrests.
This was a terrifying experience, and it's not something that anyone ever wants to have happen to their family.
4 men associated with Red Fire Farm arrested in Springfield back on March 20th during an ICE raid. 2 of the workers were detained after leaving their homes on their way to work that morning. According to a GoFundMe created for the farm workers who were arrested, the other 2 men were taken into custody after the Department of Homeland Security investigations broke into their home, shattering the front door without presenting a warrant. The article goes on to say that family members were handcuffed and removed from their home, and ICE agents threatened to arrest them as well, the 2 men both having young children in the room as they were arrested.
These are not gang members. They're not terrorists.
Western Mass News spoke with immigration attorney Matt Cameron, who's representing the 4 farm workers in this case. He tells us ICE did not have a judicial warrant, making it illegal to enter into the home and make an arrest.
They broke into the house, which is not something they're allowed to do when they don't have a judicial warrant. But that is pretty typical. It has been for some time, but especially right now of ICE enforcement.
Cameron also telling us because the men had no prior criminal records, ICE has no reason to keep them detained.
It's one thing to put somebody into removal proceedings, and have them report back to a judge, but you don't need to take them into custody like this and separate them from their families and deprive them of their income. When they don't have criminal records, they don't have gang ties.
Western Mass News also spoke with Claire Morneau, communications manager for CISA, Community Involved in Sustaining Agriculture. She explains how recent ICE raids have impacted farmers across our region.
We've heard stories about farm workers who are documented or undocumented who are hesitant to go to work because they are concerned about what might happen while they're there.
And while the full impact of these raids are still unknown, Morneau tells us they certainly have the potential to bring down our local food economy.
It's the very beginning of the growing season for a lot of farms. So I think the larger scale, longer term impacts of this are still to be revealed. We don't quite know yet how this is going to impact food production, food prices.
Western Mass News did reach out to Immigration Customs Enforcement for comment on this case, but have not heard back. For a link to that GoFundMe in support of the farm workers, visit our website, westernmassnews.com. For now, reporting live in studio, Addie Patterson, Western Mass News.